Well, good morning. It's about 8:30, maybe a few seconds before, and I want to welcome you to our 2025 Beam Business Service Distinction Series. We've got a great topic for you this morning. We'll be going no more than 30 minutes. Sometimes we get done a little bit early. I've never had a complaint about that. But I want to thank the Portsmouth, Ohio Chamber and the Maysville, Kentucky Chambers of Commerce for sponsoring this. What they do is they just send information out to the members as an add value to their membership. This is offered free to the public, and I encourage you to, if you like this, to talk to other people and invite them to come to the website and sign up for future events. So this morning, we're going to talk about communication, but I'm going to talk to you about a specific part of communication, and that's the message versus the response. The message versus the response. I want you to think about those two words. The message is what I'm wanting to communicate to somebody. The message is what I'm wanting somebody to understand, somebody to respond to, somebody to obey, perhaps, somebody to listen and give feedback. The feedback is the response. And I think a lot of times I feel like for my communication to be effective, I have to work really hard on the message. And I'm certainly about preparation and working on your messaging. But what people need to really pay more attention to is the response. The response is what tells you the effectiveness of your communication, not the message. And that's what we're going to look at this morning. So here we go. I'll get over here a little bit more in the middle where you can see me, and we'll look at the rules of the game. I always typically start with these. I want to apply these 4 rules to our presentation. These are rules for you to agree to, and I'm not going to send you out a contract to sign or an email to look at. I'm just asking you, as you sit there and you're investing 30 minutes of your life or so into this message, into this communication, I want you to get the most out of it. And the way to get the most out of this event is to submit yourself to these rules. The first rule is that of ownership. There's a distinction of the world: people who own things and then people who feel like a victim. So if you want to think about that, how does a victim think? Well, it's somebody else's fault, or it's the circumstances I'm in, or I just choose to withdraw and not deal with it and participate. A victim is somebody who is at the mercy of whatever's around them or whoever's around them, and they use that as an excuse to not be able to move forward. The owner, on the other hand, is somebody who says, if it's to be, it's up to me. I'm going to own it. I'm going to be better myself. I'm going to step up to the challenge. I'm going to persevere and continue to work. I'm going to figure this problem out. I just don't find the problems and complain about them. I actually do something about them. So there's just 2 ways of basically thinking in the world, as an owner or a victim. If you will agree to think like an owner this morning, you will get much more out of this. Secondly, here, participation. It's an expression of ownership. You choose to stand up and be counted. You choose to do what needs to be done to fully learn the game, participate in the game. So the game this morning, what does it require of you? It requires you to be present. It requires you to really give your full attention to this, to fully engage, not to multitask, not to just kind of have this running in the background like elevator music. you're going to truly engage your thinking and your mind with the questions that I ask and the statements I make. Third, to get the most out of this morning, you need to drop what you know about communication and these matters and set that all aside. You just need to be curious this morning and bring in a blank piece of paper, a blank slate, a blank whiteboard, and just be open-minded. I'm not asking you to follow this or to embrace this. I'm asking you to be open to it, to not have preconceived notions or prejudices. Just say, I don't know who this guy is. I don't know what this is about, but I'm open-minded. I'm willing to listen and consider and say, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? Instead of, well, I know that isn't right, or I know that is right. Just basically drop your opinions, drop your attitude, and just be a interested participant that is going to fully engage and bring an open mind. And then if you'll do all that and we have some fun this morning, I think fun makes the world go round. And what does that mean? Well, what you enjoy, you participate in. What you enjoy, you gain from. If you think about the different classes you took in school, it's the ones you enjoyed that you probably got the better grades in. It's probably those that you really enjoyed and were engaged with and participating in and owning that you did the best at. So fun is a choice. You need to own your fun. I'm going to choose to enjoy this morning. It may challenge my thinking. It may put a little pressure on me, but I'm willing to go there. So if you're willing to do those 4 things and follow those 4 rules, I think you'll have a very rewarding 20 or 30 minutes. So let's jump into what we're looking at. The message versus the response. The message is not the response. The distinction between the two is a key to being heard and understood. One of the questions I get as a business coach and as an organizational coach and a leadership coach, Dave, I just can't seem to get things across to people. Or I think they're hearing me, but then they go off and do something else. How can you come in and work on them and change them? I just have people that don't pay attention. Some people do good, some people don't. And the assumption with that kind of question is the problem is on their end. Now, there's certainly a problem that needs to be addressed if you are communicating and it's not being heard and it's not being understood. But I'm telling you to take that ownership role, not a victim role. I just can't get people to understand me. I just can't find people that listen, blah, blah, blah. That excuse, that negativity, that it's not me that's the problem, it's everybody else. We're setting that aside for this morning, and we're going to say, I need to look at the response and understand this first principle. And folks, if you get this principle out of this morning, it will be worth all your time this morning if you get this first statement. True communication is the response you get. It's not the message. It's the response to the message. True communication is the response. Think about what communication is. We're sending out a signal. We're sending out a message. And it floats through the air and it goes through filters and it gets battered around and it finally reaches the ears and the mind of the person we're attempting to communicate to. Maybe it's being sent across text. I don't recommend it for deeper things, for simple instructions. I think texting and emailing is wonderful, but it just lacks context. But that's a side note. Let me get back to this. We're sending out a message in some way. We're speaking it, writing it, emailing it, texting it, and then it reaches the other party. Now, when it gets to the other party's shoreline, it's come across that ocean, that party is going to filter it. That party is going to think about it a little differently, and they're going to hear some of it, and they're not going to hear all of it, perhaps. And they're going to have a message. The message that they have may not match the message you sent out. It probably doesn't. And then they're going to respond to that. So they're going to send a response across that ocean, and it's going to come back through your filter. And by the time we've made that whole round between sending the message out, having it processed by the other person, and it comes back to us, what you get back is the true communication. It's not what you sent out. Because true communication is shared. True communication is what is understood. It's not what you say. It's not what you write. That is the message. I hope you see that distinction as we start this morning. It's not what you say, it's what they hear. It's not what you say or what you write. Well, it's not what you write, it's what they understand. Until you get feedback in terms of response, that might be an action they take or a message they send back to you, you do not have a sense of how good your communication is. The only way to validate or measure communication is to look at the response. I hope you see that, because you must learn to recognize and navigate the filters in this communication process. I'm talking to leaders this morning. I'm talking to people who want to work with people to make a difference in their lives, to make a difference in the customers they serve, to make a difference in the people they do life with. Our children, our grandchildren, our friends, our community members, our church members, the people that we do life with. This is a life lesson. There are filters. Filters hold things back. Filters take things out. And everybody has their filters. I have mine, you have yours. This is why communication is so challenging, because it's not what you say and it's not what you write. It's what they hear and what they understand. You could give somebody a perfect treatise in Chinese, and if you don't know the Chinese language, it could be said well, it could be written well, and nobody on the other end, unless they know Chinese, would understand it. So there is no communication that occurred there. That's another way to look at it. And when you talk to people and you ask people to do things, and maybe you're managing people or supervising people, it's not what you send out, it's what you get back that tells you what was communicated. And it is different because it's gone through filters. Let's move on a little bit. Second, it's a Stephen Covey principle out of the 7 Habits. It's that classic personal growth book by Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and this is one of the habits. Seek first to understand, then be understood. Here's another magical key for you this morning, another nugget. If you want to be understood by your audience, whether that's an employee, a child, a spouse, whoever, if you want to be understood, the first step you must take is to understand them. It's counterintuitive. But Dave, don't I need to talk louder? Don't I need to write it better? Don't I need to sing it in a better tune? Don't I need to change my message? Not really. You need to seek first to understand your audience. You need to understand the person you're communicating to. You want to know their filters. You need to be very present and really get a sense. If you want to be understood, you have to know who you're communicating to. It's common sense, but people rush around, squirrels on caffeine, never slowing down to actually listen before you speak. It's about presence. It's about being with the person, fully being with the person, not multitasking, not taking messages, not glancing at the clock, fully being present. It's about getting permission from that person to enter into a communication with them. You ask permission to you ask them if you can ask a few questions and then listen deeply. It's a little unnerving to be heard deeply, to sit with a person that really listens to you, that really cares. It's a blessing. It's an amazing experience, but it is rare. Most people hear about half of what is said, or maybe two-thirds if they're really good. This is about hearing all of it and validating it. Second, it's realizing that in the first part of my communication where I'm trying to understand you, one great question is worth 1,000 strong statements for me. In other words, me barking orders or talking or explaining, explanations just get real murky and confusing. I need to use less words, bigger ears, and the words that I use need to be in terms of curious questions. When I ask a good, open-ended, curious question, that sets the stage for me understanding. When the other person starts to open up and communicate first, then we're on the path to a mutual understanding. It's about dancing and not wrestling. When you get resistive to people's words or what they text or what you think they're saying, when you start to have a story about that and you start to tense up and you get out of the presence and you start to care a little less, you start to wrestle with the situation, and that just wears you down. You need to dance. You need to find it interesting. You need to get rid of that I know. We talked about that earlier, and just be curious. When you sit with a person, and I prefer face-to-face, but even in your emailing and in your texting and in your communication that way, respect engenders respect. Speak in a tone, speak in a way, a kind way, a caring way, an interested way. Give out what you want to give back, an understanding way, because you want to be understood. What you want from the other person, give that. It's the way life works. It's the law of reciprocity. It's sowing and reaping. What you put in the ground is what grows. So what are you putting towards people? These are good questions. When you're not getting the response that you like to have from your communication, am I wrestling? Have I got stories? Do I truly understand the other person? It's the father with his son. I just don't understand him. He doesn't listen to me. I just don't understand my son. He never listens. The fact is, the father doesn't understand because he's not listening. We understand not when we talk, but when we listen. And you need to seek that before you'll likely get the other person to understand you. Because respect engenders respect. And the way to show respect is to truly be present, to care, to be curious, and listen. It is a discipline. It is a selfless thing. You have to set yourself and your ego aside and your judgment aside and just be present and listen. Third, now that I've done that and they've done that, we have a rapport and we have some understanding. Perhaps I'm in a leadership position. I'm a manager. Effective communication is certainly kind and respectful, but it's also very clear and very concise. Rambling explanations wear people out and they tune it out like a bad radio show or telemarketer. If you're hearing what I'm saying, we need to learn how to be clear and concise. It's a discipline. Fewer words, clearer words, more direct words are kind. All the sugaring up of the recipe, all the niceties that we add, all the social pleasing that we sprinkle in, all the apologies that we put in our communication, those nice things are unkind. They dilute the message. They take away from what we are attempting to do. Nice is unkind. The NICE acronym means nothing inside cares enough. You don't care enough to be clear. You don't care enough to tell it like it is. Now, I'm not into unkindness or into being brash or harsh with people. You can be gentle and you can be understanding, but clear and direct and concise is kind. Unclear, sugary, people-pleasing, apologetic, I'm so sorry, but this is the way it is, blah, 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 is unkind. It's a pleasing move. It's selfish. I'm worried about how these people are going to feel about me and what I'm saying. It's not about you. It's about them. True leadership, it's about the other person. And what the other person likely needs is some kind, clear, concise, direct communication in the context of you understanding them. You seek first to understand, and then you have set the table to have a true communication with a great response. Less is more. These sessions I used to have online, these free sessions used to be an hour. We now go 20 to 30 minutes. It's better. I believe it's better. It's less. And always, when you bring that communication to an agreement, somebody agrees to do something, you agree to do something, you agree to change something, we agree that we see things differently, always validate it. Not because you doubt it, it's because true communication is the response you get. Well, I need to validate the response. Was that message really received? And can that person give it back to me in a way that I am sure that we have communicated? And vice versa. You need to validate what they're telling you back to them. Do I understand you? This is what I'm hearing you say. Let me put it in my own words. Do I have it? Do I get it? What am I missing is a great question. What am I missing? This is Leadership 101. This is, you take the lead to understand before being understood. You take the lead to take ownership of of your message and realize that message is only good as the response it gets. And if I'm not getting the response I need to take ownership of that communication, and I need to have a better conversation. I need to have a better communication. Probably a less nice communication, probably a smaller communication, probably a clear, concise, direct conversation, which people pleasers just have difficulty with because they just like to sugar up the recipe and flour it up so much that you hardly know what's being said. It is not kind to communicate like that. Finally, this kind of pulls it all together. Context rules. Context rules. What do I mean by context? Well, there's content. Content is the message. It's the words you're using. Context is the tone. And folks, I'm just going to tell you right now, I don't think emoticons get it done. They're funny and I laugh at them, but we really are in a challenging time when so much communication is done virtually, or it's done like this, which is not near as good as being present with people. And it's also, now it's mostly, texting and social media sites. Those messages have no context Very little context. So people make the context up, and that context is a filter, and that context often determines in their minds what they're hearing. Their presuppositions, their prejudices, whatever they go into that mode of receiving in is how they filter that communication. This is why great leaders know how to sit down and have true communication, true conversation based on a kind listening first. So context rules. I say it this way, it's more about the music and less about the lyrics. There's a lot of songs I like and I don't even know what the lyrics are. Maybe I've heard them subconsciously, but I'm not paying attention. I like the beat. I like the music. If you're sitting down in an energetic, loving, kind, open, leading, serving way, your message will be much more receivable than if you sit down in an impatient, aggravated, irritated, whiny Eeyore mode. It's more about the music. It's about the energy you bring as much as it is about what you're saying. I'm not saying that the message is not important. The content is not important, but it needs to be kind, clear, and concise. What you put that meal on, the plate and the silverware and the setting and the place where we're going to have that beautiful meal, that's the context. And context rules. It really does. What am I saying? You need to work harder on how you're being than you do on the content. You're preparing to have a conversation with somebody and you're more worried about what you're going to say and how you're going to explain it. And I'm saying be less concerned about that and be more concerned about you. And in fact, how you're going to show up, about your heart, about your emotion, about your self-control, about your self-awareness. You need to, how you show up as a person rules. That's the context. You are the context. The content is just the message you're bringing. The message is what's important, but it doesn't get through the filter if you show up mad, angry, sarcastic, judgmental. I'm just talking about myself right now. When I show up like that, I find that the response I get is pretty bad, even though the message is fine. Finally, true accountability follows commitment. I find all kinds of people in businesses trying to have accountability. They say, that's the problem here, Dave. We don't have communication and accountability. What do you mean by that? Well, people don't do what they're told, and there's no consequences. And I'm digging a little deeper and saying, well, what kind of commitments were made? Well, it was assumed that if you work here, you got a job to do, and we don't have validation of the communication. We have expectations, we have stories and myths, and we don't have agreement. That agreement that comes from that listening and communication can now be the basis for a commitment that we can hold people accountable to. People are held accountable to their commitment, not so much to the boss, but to the commitment they're making. And if you got people in your organization that can't be accountable to their commitments, they maybe don't belong there. Context rules. If you're not getting the response you want in your messaging, look in the mirror and look at what you're bringing as context to that conversation. So, just to summarize, true communication is the response you get. You need to seek first to understand and then be understood. Effective communication is kind, clear, and concise, and context rules. That's what I have for you today. 3 offers. First one, if you want a copy of that slide, I'll email it to you, davebeam@mentordavebeam.com. Just say I'd like a copy of that PowerPoint slide. Second, at my website, 300 articles, about 30 plus hours of training and events like this, free, and you can sign up there and get an article, usually less than 300 words, every Monday morning from me, fresh off the press. Just go to the website. You can sign up there and get all that. And finally, if you would like to talk at another level about this, about your situation and your communication, and you want a coach, that'd be me, help you, give you some feedback and some thought and a third party view of your communication and what may be dysfunctional and why it's not working so well, or how you can just be better. Schedule it with me, Dave Beam at mentordavebeam.com. This does not mean that we're going to be working together. It doesn't mean that I'm even going to ask us to work together, but it could lead to some business for me, or it may not lead to that. That is not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to help you with your communication. And I would enjoy a communication like that with any of you that are on this call today. So feel free to just email me and sign up. So that's what we have today. I appreciate the group we have here today. I hope that's been a blessing and been an encouragement. There's more to come, one a month for the rest of the year, and then there's plenty that are on the website that have already been done. Just go there and get the links. We'll talk to you next time. Thank you all.